Are you currently looking for a bookstore that has a great selection of books? Well, Kizzy's Books and More is that bookstore. Visit www.kizzy'sbooksandmore.com to purchase your next book for our book club. Use coupon code VulgarGenius to receive 10% off the subtotal of your first order. Yuyi Morales has captivated children for over 20 years with her vibrant illustrations and beautiful stories. Her most recent release, Bright Star, is a moving story about a young fawn living with her mother in a desert borderland. As the fawn is confronted with obstacles, its mother reassures her to continue in spite of the hardships that arise.
We spoke to Yuyi about her art exhibit, Soñadora, previously on tour at the Orlando Museum of Art, which closed this past December. She also talked about how a trip to the library with her son sparked an entire career that blended her love for art, storytelling, and the rich culture and history of her country, Mexico. So stay tuned for another episode of the Vulgar Geniuses podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Vulgar Geniuses podcast. We are your hosts.
My name is Denny.
And I am Veronica. And today we have a wonderful guest that is joining us today. This is very monumental for us, and we are so excited. We are joined today by Yuyi Morales. Yuyi Morales was born in Jalapa, Mexico, the city of flowers and spring. After migrating to the U.S. in 1994, she struggled with English and loneliness in a culture foreign to her, but found solace in public libraries where she read children's books with her son and discovered a renewed interest in stories and art. She is now the author and illustrator of many books for children, including the New York Times bestseller Dreamers and Nino Wrestles the World. And she is a 6-time winner of the Puro Belpré Medal for an outstanding work of literature for children that best portrays, affirms, and celebrates the Latino culture experience. Other honors include the America's Award, the Golden Kite Medal, the Christopher Award, the Jane Addams Award, and the Tomas Rivera Award. In 2015, she received the Caldecott Honor for her book, Viva Frida. Thank you for joining us on the show. It is a pleasure and an honor. How are you doing today, Judy?
I'm doing really well. I'm happy to be here in your presence and looking forward to having a chat, a nice conversation.
So just a little secret. My son's favorite book of yours is Viva Frida and Just a Minute.
Oh,
yes. And every time he would be like, why did Yuyi wrote this? Why is this and that? It's amazing and it's really, really cute. I wish I could have recorded it for you, but the best moments happen when you're not recording, right? But he is very into your books, very much invested.
Wow.
Yes.
I really hope that I can meet him someday.
Yes, he would have a lot of questions for you.
I'll pretend that I had the answers when he...
And the reason why you are joining us in conversation today is that your work was on exhibit in our local art gallery at the Orlando Museum of Art. And it was just wonderful walking into that space to see your works just portrayed throughout so many rooms and to read your story and how you came up with the works that you did, and just to see everything from the sketches, from the paintings, from having a section there for the children to read your books. And so we knew, we were like, we have to speak to her.
Yeah, and even your pictures were like also set lower, so yes, like the children can see it. And because when my son went in there, he's like, I think I know this lady. I think I know this picture. She was talking about, Grandma Beetle,
yes,
and all of the grandchildren, because
Well, it looked like the museum, the Orlando Museum, really made the work to make it accessible to children, and that's what I like the most. Obviously, one of my favorite parts was how they recreated that scene of Señor Calavera when he's in his bicycle, which is part of the story of Just in Case, in which Señor Calavera has gathered a lot of presents because he's gonna go and see Grandma Beadle for her birthday party, and not having a lot of experience on life and celebrating life. He's coming to the party without a present, right? And then once he has gathered all these presents from the alphabet, then he's stripped. And the museum, that like the people there managed to have a real bicycle with a human-sized skeleton, and just put it all over one of the rooms, in really recreating that moment of where all the toys and the presents, and they just go ballistic. And I love being there. I really appreciated how they made something just come alive. I love that. And then they also had this activities that children could go and sit there and be next to the artwork, be next to the stories, and create themselves. I really love the experience, what they did there.
Yeah, and it was definitely a treat for us to be able to go and take part and just see what they've created with your work there. But before we dive in any further into you and everything that you've written under the sun, we like to do a little thing to just like loosen up the conversation joints a bit.
All right.
So we have just a little bit of questions. This was dug deep by my friend Veronica. And her question goes, you were a swimmer in high school. What was your favorite race to compete in?
I love breast. Is that how you call it? And in Espanol, we call it nado de pecho, which is like breaststroke. Yeah, that was my favorite one. Yeah. And I like, yes, I was a swimmer in high school, but I started swimming when I was in elementary school.
Oh. Yeah. So that love for the water goes way back.
Yes.
You have reels that have the best music.
Oh,
it was so good when I was jamming to your Instagram. What are you currently listening to right now?
Wow, I am listening to a lot of music that is made, which is called medicine music. Right. So I like the one that is in Spanish because it's made by people here in our country or South Central America, and usually these are not only musicians but they are healers, and what they are creating is this medicine through the songs, and so I follow a lot of that people. I don't necessarily remember their names. Alonso del Rio. There is a group called Ayahuapu that I listen to a lot, and then when you start listening to those songs, then the algorithm allows you to recognize and to introduces you to other groups and singers, and that's what I'm listening to most of the time now.
Can you make us a playlist? Is there a playlist somewhere where we can start off and like, because I was into it, because I know at every end of your book you like to provide lists or stuff. Maybe someday, huh?
I really like the idea, so yes, I'm gonna make a playlist.
Yay! What is the best thing about Mexico and being Mexican?
Oh my gosh. I think it is the connections that people create, but it's also the resilience. Mexico is a beautiful country. We have many different kinds of environments. We have these family connections, but at the same time, living in Mexico is not easy. And maybe from my place of privilege, I see only the beautiful things. But there are places here in Mexico where it can even be dangerous to live. And I think that for me, the strongest things that I have found in Mexico are people who are fighting for a better way of life.
Right.
And just getting to those communities and making connections with that people, that is the best part for me. These are another kind of dreamers. These are dreamers who are working really hard, sometimes putting themselves in danger to make sure that the conditions of living here in these places are fine for everybody. Not only for one of us, but for everybody. So community and community work and people who are creating that community work is the best thing that you can find here in Mexico. And sometimes you can find them here in the city. Sometimes you have to go to the communities, and sometimes you have to create it yourself. And for me, that is the best that you will find in Mexico. Yes, we have beautiful spaces, mountain, rivers, and everything. But the people who are here taking care of those spaces, and and those who live in those spaces are the guardians of those spaces, that is the best that you will find here in Mexico.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because me and my husband went to Merida after Dia de los Muertos, and you are right. Like, it's the people that make a certain area. You see how they are so passionate about their culture, about the food that they make. They're so proud of the spaces that they hold dear to their hearts, the cenotes,
Yes.
like, Uxmal, Chichen Itza. It was really, really wonderful. So, when I learned that you are Mexican, I'm like, this makes all the sense in the world. That's why you have such passion and, like, rigor for, like, life and, like, art and taking care of, what is important, like, to us human beings.
Thank you.
So now we go to the questions and how we met you. How did our collaboration with the Orlando Museum of Art come about?
Sure. Well, my son, the only son that I have, he's which is a big part of my story, my immigrant story. Now he is also the person who is in charge of making those connections. So more than that, like 3 years ago, it was a museum. I want to say Nashville. I don't remember the exact name of the city in Texas, who has a gallery, a museum there for children's book art. They contacted me and they asked if they could make a solo exhibit of my work. But I live in Mexico now, and most of my artwork is in a warehouse in San Francisco, where I lived for many years. So I couldn't, because of my work and my schedule, I couldn't make myself available to go and do and make the artwork available also for this exhibit. So my son did that. He was the one who was in charge of going and making the connections and going to the warehouse and helping the people from this museum first to gather the paintings and the artwork that they were going to use, and they exhibit my work. I'm gonna say, like, for, I don't know, for a few months. It was not nearly a year, but it was several months. And then when they contacted me, they say, we want this for, actually they say they wanted it for 2 years. But mostly that they will have it for some time, and then they will make it a traveling exhibit. So they started making it available for any other museums or galleries who wanted to take the artwork and exhibit it. So I think Orlando is now the second place that it is going to, because also that happened during the like the opening of the original exhibit happened just a few weeks before COVID hit. So then it was there, but eventually it was closed for a while. Then they had some visits, but they were limited. And if I am remembering correctly, it actually went somewhere else, and then Orlando might be the second or the third museum that is hosting the exhibit. So I know that the connection went through that original museum, and also my son was the one who helped. Yeah.
What a treat it is to have your son be a part of your work.
Yes.
Like he's been there since the very beginning of everything. Yes. And to now have him like helping to curate these art exhibits for you over the country, that has to be something very special for you.
You're right, because he's part of the story, like for me, falling in love with books, starting to dream that I could create books like the ones I saw at the library. All of that happened because of him and with him. Mm-hmm. We were I was this immigrant. I know he had the United States citizenship because his father was a citizen, but I didn't. And, when you have a mother who is not a citizen, you go through the whole experience just the same. So he was my companion in that journey of discovering my path in the United States, of falling in love with the books, of finding the public library. He was all along with me. And one of the strongest bonds that we have are books, precisely because we read them together. As I was starting to learn my English, he was also starting to learn how to speak both in English and Espanol. And yeah, he's been a part of the journey from the beginning, and now he continues being my companion. Yeah, and I love that.
That's special.
Yeah. I wish I would have that with my son, because now he is all about the languages, and he is drawn to Spanish a lot. I'm Filipino, so he tries to speak my language, and his dad is Chinese, so it's a lot of languages, but he is very drawn to Spanish because of this movie called Vivo, and an old man named Andres.
Oh,
and that,
really?
Yes, that is everything. He dressed up as Andres for Halloween. with a guitar, the the glasses, and the little white loafers.
Is Andres someone that you know, or he's a musician?
It's a character in a cartoon.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But that's his favorite person.
Wow.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
It is. Why did you wanted to highlight the meaning of home in that exhibit, particularly the one that we saw in Orlando?
Well, home has been like a constant theme and question in my work. When I started making books, I was absolutely homesick. And when I say I started making books, I don't mean like books like the ones that you see published now. I mean like the books that I made in my dining table, between meals, where I will clear the table and then I will try my hand at copying the books that I saw. So as I was doing those books, I think that I was really kind of bringing to my life those things that I miss, that I have left behind at home, because home was Mexico, because that's what was familiar to me, because everything that was important and that gave me a sense of belonging was still here. So going through my books has been that journey of finding my heart, of finding and surrounding myself with all the things that I needed to feel like I was home. And as an immigrant, and I know that a lot of us go through that process of first maybe not even understanding why or what are we gonna do at the new place and how we are gonna do it, and just to me it took me years and years and years to feel like I was home. And also having my heart always divided in two. Like even when I start feeling like, yes, the United States is my home, I was still like missing home here in Mexico. And when I will come to Mexico, I knew that big part of my life was there. And that has been a constant companion during my making of the books. Like, who is this person? Who is this person who wants to create books and tell stories, or learn how to make drawings or use colors, depending of the places that I am habitating at the moment, whether I am in the United States, I am in the suburbs, I am at a little apartment with no colors, or where I am now. I am now in Mexico, and I am creating, and it's always this sense of what are the things that sustain me, and what are the paths that I want to walk in, and those are always the ones that decide what my next story is going to be about.
So, we're talking about home. And so what I wanted you to do is just to go back with me in your early days of drawing, when you were a child and you sat and watched your mom sewing animals to sell. How much of an influence did your mother have into your work as becoming an illustrator?
Yeah, my mom is that kind of mom that does everything, like everything. Like, kind of like, because she's creative, but also because the economy also calls for mothers to be resourceful, and to create what she was going to provide to us children. So my mom is an artist, although she doesn't necessarily consider herself an artist. She's not someone who draws or paints or anything, but she's an artist in life. She's always creating everything that is going to be in her life. And I saw her constantly doing that. And when we were children, I had two sisters that I grew up with, and we will be constantly in awe to just how she made things appear, and whether it was that she needed a coat, or crocheted some sandals for us, or she made the lamps next to our bed with also a handmade bedspread. Like, she will do everything. And we will ask her, so Mom, how do you know that? How do you know how to do it? Or how do you know that piece of information? And she used to say, because I know everything. And then she will add, but whatever I don't know, I just make it up. And that has, I have carried that with me until now, that no matter what, if you don't know how to make it, you just pretend you do and make it up, and go ahead, and whether you have to research or try and make mistakes and try again. But yeah, just that kind of confidence, you take it for yourself and you appropriate it, and you say, yeah, whatever happens is I'm gonna do it. And that comes from my mother, and she continues to be this person. She comes from a big family. She had 11 brothers and sisters, and she is the only one who finished elementary school. And it's kind of like her journey also is that of always pushing for learning more, for giving more, for opening up her world. And I think that that's the artistry that she has inherited, that she has passed on to the people that she has in her life. So she is a big influence. And I also remember that she helped me to figure out how to draw faces. That was very important to me. I was very, very young, I don't know, 3, probably 4 the most. And she taught me, she said, if you are gonna make a face, make first a circle, and then kind of like calculate what's the half of the circle, and from there start drawing your face, like make the eyes, the nose, the mouth, but put it on the lower part of the circle, because then you will be making the face of a baby or a child. And I remember that lesson very well, and I still follow her advice.
That's wonderful. While doing research on your book, I realized that in the midst of reading, that I often fail to take advantage of like really looking at the pictures that are drawn within the book. Because you're reading to a child, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna read this paragraph, I'm gonna flip and get to the next page.
Yes.
And because of that, I wasn't allowing myself to really sit with the work that I'm reading when I'm reading these children books. But your art has the power of pulling the reader in and really sitting with this work in its totality. Your illustrations are so different, but all tied with a very signature features that make it yours. When you first approach writing and shaping a story, do you start with the pictures first or the words?
I start with the words. It's more like the words because I need to get to a concept, to a story. Yeah, so I know that I want to tell a story, but most of the time I have no idea what the story is going to be like. Just no idea. Completely lost, completely blank. And I know that if I start pulling some words, then that those words will call for other words, and then it starts taking shape. And the same happens also with drawings. Like sometimes I have no idea how my characters are going to look like or anything like that. But I know that if I start making a line and just trying my hand on drawing, then those lines and those shapes would call for other shapes, and then everything starts building up. But I usually start with words. And then I try not to think of drawings as much because my imagination is not as powerful as my actions. No, my if I try to imagine everything ahead of time, for some reason I feel limited. But if I go and I bring a piece of paper and I start drawing or I start putting words, then things start to happen. And eventually, after a long time and a lot of work, they will be beyond whatever I had even envisioned when I was just trying to imagine what was going to happen. So I am a big believer of just sitting and doing the work. Yes, imagining things is important, super important. I do a lot of daydreaming, but I try to do my daydreaming with a piece of paper and a pencil in my hand. That's what works best for me. So then, answering to your question, I usually start with words, but I also move to other things. I might draw a little bit, and then I will go to the words, and I know that whatever it takes to get to the story. If I have to get up and dance, I'll do that. If I had to go and play a song, I'll do that. Just whatever it takes to get to the story.
I was wondering, because your art is just so vivid and dreamlike, and I was wondering, when I looked through your books, at least at one point, if not throughout, you will see one character that is in flight in some kind of way. Is that on purpose? Is that something that you just don't realize that you're putting in there? But there always seems to be like floating in the air, and it's the most beautiful thing.
Oh, well, now that you mention it, perhaps there is a little bit of like a conscious search there, but not necessarily. Maybe I don't realize that that's also something that happens when I'm working that I don't think a lot about. You know how they say that sometimes your artwork looks like you. And maybe that's what happens when I'm creating, I'm doing something. I'm sure that a lot of parts of what I like and what I am and where I want to go just appear in the page. And maybe when you see that there is a lot of someone in flight, it has to do with some things that are also looking for their wings, in me. Yeah.
Yeah. we had like, thought of like, oh, does she write first or does she draw first? We both had that same question because I always say this about children's book writers, that they don't need a lot of words. Like, your words have to be short, understandable by everybody, but very
Yes.
impactful. So I think like when you start a project, you basically have this kind of like idea of what you wanted to do. That's how I feel when I would like read your books, because I've read your books multiple times to this 3-year-old of mine. So I'm like, there is this like, theme of like just love for Mexico and your country, and of who you are. Was that like always the center of like your art and your books for the most part, because that is you?
That's a good question. Like right off the bat, I don't know if I would say it is always me, but I know that when I have created something, if I look back, I can see the traces of me there. I can see things I have dreamed with or dream about, or things that are important to me. And one of the things that I like a lot is research. So um, part of what, like, the first impulse is I love this. I love colors. I love the Totonacan culture, or or I like music and the jarana. That might be my first impulse. But after something grabs me, I go and do a lot of research, and I dig, and I really love to find things about the things that I like, but that maybe I didn't know before, and a lot of the stories come from there. Um, I'm here. I'm looking at my place where I'm working at right now, and I have um I don't know how you call it. It's just a line, a string here with drawings and things that I keep researching. Like, they are part of the next story, but it's not enough that I know how to draw them now, how they are gonna look like. But I'm always trying to find layers for the characters and for the stories. I spend a lot of time doing those things. So I think that the initial impulse comes from being really attracted to something or feeling connected to that, and then it's like getting to know them really, really deep, because the more that I know them, the more that I believe that I will be able to make also the reader care for them. The more information there is about them, the more that you will care. And sometimes that information is not necessarily in the text, but the research informs even the few words that go in the text, even the few objects that you will see in the scene. It is informed by that research and that getting to know them really deep. And then I don't need to put all that research in the book. I just need to be truthful to who I think they are. Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yes.
Yes. Like, I don't know, for the people that will be listening to this, like, if you have to rewind all of that, because that is powerful. Like, you can listen to that multiple times and get a little like gems from that. Like that. Yes.
I had a button.
So speaking of this information, what I love about your books is at the end of it, specifically because, your latest book is called Bright Star.
Yes.
There were some explanations that you wrote on this book. One of the many things that struck me that we don't always think about is the animals, like the flora and the fauna that are native to these lands. That they could also been affected by this wall of separations. It doesn't stop with humans. It humbled me that I took those things for granted, and was ultimately more ashamed of what is happening in those border towns. What does being one with the land and understanding that we have that symbiotic relationship with it as humans, I feel like made you more an effective artist and storyteller?
And yes, and that's something that I didn't know either. as I started telling the story, I knew I wanted to tell the story of the borderlands, because of the things that were happening to people in those spaces. And then as I started researching the borderlands, then I got to meet people who opened up my eyes about what's really happening there. It is planetary. It involves the whole planet. It's not just the humans. It's not only the children or the families, which are, a lot of them are going through really, really spectacular, difficult things there. But it's also the decimation of the land. And I guess we should know that. We should know that we are that connected, that if animals or plants or the environment is being destroyed, we are also destroying what sustains us.
Right.
But I need to confess that in some ways I didn't understand. I didn't understand the scope of the whole thing. So as I started researching, I realized that I couldn't tell a story only through the human eyes. That we are just one more of the characters in that story, and that story won't be changed for better if we don't also do it with the other species, with the land, with the connection that we all have as humans. I think that there is a struggle there that I also kind of went through, which is that we tend to care mostly for those that are very close to us, whether it's our family, our own children, our neighborhood. But what happened to those that we don't see? And there is a lot of us that we don't see in the borderlands. There is a lot that we don't see. If you were like me, you probably thought that in the borderlands there is almost nothing there because the environment is harsh, because you don't get to see necessarily the animals. There are not a lot of plants that thrive there. The ones that thrive there have systems, have ways of growing that are very complex. And so when you believe that nothing is there, there is nothing to care for. But that's not the truth. The truth is that there is so much living there, but only because we don't see them, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I think that part of how we take care of each other first is that we have to see each other. And we need to stop invisibilizing each other, and we need to make ourselves be seen and be able to see the others. And for me, that was something that I processed through the book, that I hope that I could invite the reader, the children, to be curious and to recognize that there are some things that we might not see, but that we can find them, and they are there, and we are all connected.
Oh my goodness. So since you made a confession, I'm gonna make a confession. It was actually my son that pointed out that fact for me. I just made it into like nice words, but it was his concern about the animals and how they're gonna manage all throughout that story that made me really think about it. And then when I read the back of your book, and I'm like, how did he know? How did he know? So it's like, that's why it really humbled me, because I was like, here we're all thinking we're adults, high and mighty, and oh yeah, I'm the mommy, I know everything, right? I don't. And it was him that kind of pointed out, all the disparity of like what is happening to these animals, and we need to pay attention to these animals. And
well, children are our teachers.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that you tell me this about him, because we need to listen to him.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
He's a wise person.
So your art comes with a lot of care and intention. Can you talk to us about the mixed mediums that made Bright Star a little bit more different than your other books?
Yeah, Bright Star, in a way, it is similar to Dreamers, which I created before, but it also steps into its own direction. And Dreamers is also an immigrant story, and it's based in my own story. And when I made Bright Star, I was reading Dreamers everywhere. I was sharing the story of Dreamers, and I was also celebrating like my own immigration story, because I had been fortunate enough to have a lot of people who extended their hands to me and allowed me to make a home out of the new place, the United States, new place for me. Um, and but while I was celebrating that book, then I was also seeing a lot of people trying to cross the border from Mexico into the United States and not being even permitted to sometimes even apply for asylum, just complete different conditions to the ones that I have found. So for me, it was important to continue exploring what happens at the border and what happens with immigration. And what we were mentioning before, people are not the only ones who immigrate, also animals and even plants have their own ways of moving from one place to another. So I kind of came a little from Dreamers. Had created artwork, taking photographs of most of the meaningful things that were part of my journey as an immigrant. And when I created Bright Star, I used a similar technique, but I also painted on paper and created colors and textures, and those I put it inside of my computer, and then I was able to use those colors to paint the world of Bright Star. But I also took photographs of some things that were important to me. And there are two photographs, actually, only two photographs that I use for making colors and textures. And those were, first I took a picture of immigration wall. It was a fence, it was metal, and it was concrete. And I took a picture, a close-up of that material, and I used it to put it inside of my computer, and I used it to paint the border wall that you see in the story of Bright Star. The other important photograph that I took is that I visited. I actually went to Arizona and New Mexico to do the research as I was in the drawings, and I also visited an immigrant shelter in the side of Mexico, in a place that is called Agua Prieta in Sonora, and there was only a few families. Most of them were adults who are waiting to be called to review I'm forgetting the word, but to see if they are allowed to come into the United States. And there was a mother with a baby who was coming. She was coming from Central America, and she was waiting to have her name called. And she was with the baby was only a few months old, almost a year. And I asked for her permission to take a photograph of the arm of the baby. And that photograph, I mixed it with some of other colors that I had in my computer and created the colors for the skin of the children there. So that's in terms of using photographs and using colors to create my own palette and then paint with that. But there's also like the research that I did, so that the animals and the plants that I was portraying in the story were significant to the story. You know, that, for example, there are saguaro trees or saguaro cactuses that we call them. Now, saguaros are protected by environmental laws in the United States. However, when walls have been built or any kind of device that tries to stop immigrants from crossing into the United States, sometimes in Congress, in fights, so that they overturn those laws, so that then the land can be built into, whether it's a road for how you call it, border patrols to go through, to build a wall, or to put devices like really bright lights or anything, you know. And those saguaros are actually removed, and sometimes they are just toppled down and cut and left there, even though they not only they are protected, but they take for years and years, sometimes they are hundreds of years to grow, and they are sacred. And yet they are being so just to mention some of the that even though it's not actual painting, it's something that informs how the artwork is going to be created.
So, Gigi, you have a very distinct voice in your book. You write in both Spanish and English, which allows you to explore feelings and situations more accurately. Because I understand this, because I also speak a second language, there's just some things you can't explain in English. How liberating was it to be allowed to express your writing in that manner, and people are responding to it positively?
Yeah, it's been a journey as well, because even from my first book, I started using words in Spanish in my text, but that's not necessarily something that has been allowed to do to authors. Like, I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of people before me who had already opened up that path for us, because for a long time it was thought that either books in Spanish won't sell, so if you put some words in Espanol, there are people who are not going to want to buy the book. But I did it from the very beginning, and because the response was great, then kind of like created this trust in this mixing of the language. Now, maybe it was something new for publishers, because this is something that is happening in schools constantly. If you go to the teachers and in the classroom and with educators, they are dealing and they are valuing like the knowledge of people who speaks other languages that are not English, second languages or third languages, and there are teachers who have been recognizing the wisdom and the strength that words in languages outside of the English language bring to the lives and the experiences of children. So teachers already knew it, but maybe it wasn't necessarily known in the publishing industry. But it's been a journey, and things are changing nowadays. When I make my books, even my own editors are the ones who tell me, you know what, these books are gonna be both, like, we are gonna make editions both in English and in Spanish, and they are going to come out at the same time, because people are asking for the books in Spanish. But also, one of the things that I like the most, besides having these books created in both languages, is to be able, in my books in English, already bring the Espanol and mingle together. Because to me, it makes it for real communication. When we are talking about picture books. Picture books are not only words in English.
Right.
Picture books are words, but there are shapes, there are colors, there are page turnings, there are spaces. And then the languages in a picture book are infinite. We have many different ways of reading a picture book, and it has nothing to do just with whether it's in English or in Spanish, or if we use a word that is in another language. So why cannot the picture book be the best container for all those different ways of communicating, of making ourselves be understood? So for me, yes, the word is freedom, is liberated, is really being able to speak with your heart, with your brain, with your guts, with everything that you need to tell what you want to say. And it just makes me joyful, makes me happy. And like what I do is like with Bright Star, I want to even highlight the words in any language, both in English and Spanish, but I want to make them just beautiful singing, whether I embroider them or anything, I need to make them be this magical, this powerful way of communicating my story. And to me, being able to have the two languages that I know, and I wish I knew more in this case, I actually want to say the many languages that I know, because I know how to draw, I know how to do other things, how all of these languages together to just create an even more powerful narrative. That's real art, and that's real freedom. Yeah.
Yes, Juji is changing the world.
One book at a time.
Yes. So, like you've mentioned earlier, your books were meant for children. To me, it's a form of resistance and a call for change. To me, it's your weapon in which you allow your art to speak for immigrants and the displaced. Is this your way not only to reach out to them, but also to allow themselves to heal while consuming your art by making them feel less alone and validating their existence?
Wow. Thank you. One of the things that when I was making Bright Star, one of the things that was pulling me was trying to understand how we heal things that feel very difficult to heal. And I set out to ask to everybody, like, there are things that were happening to children that were irreparable. Children at the border, children who were being separated from their families or put in cages, or even separated permanently from their families, where they will not be able to see them again. And for me, the big question was how, so I am someone who makes books for children. How can I continue making stories where I overlook what is happening to some of those children? And if I'm trying to tell a story with my books, how do you acknowledge that a lot of those children who are reading my stories are going through things that we adults will never even know what to do with them, And so for me, the question is, how do you heal something that feels irreparable? Was very, very important. And I continue asking that question. Part of answering it was making that book and trying to find answers to that question. Most recently, I've been learning about how if we want to heal, we might look for an individual healing, but that is not real healing. If we want true healing to happen, we are going to have to do it collectively. Because what we have to heal is not the thing that happened to me. It's the thing that is happening to all of us. And it's happening to all of us because we are all part of the system. We are all part of the experience. We are all actors and characters in this story that our planet and our world is and life is going through at this moment. So if we want real healing, we are going to have to do it together. For me, making those books is kind of like a way of opening my arms. I'm hoping that we are going to do the healing together. Mm-hmm. It's not enough that I heal whatever feels like to me that I have to heal. It won't be real healing until we do it as a collective. And Bright Star or Dreamers or some of my other books is part of this invitation. It's part of like, here's a little blanket, that I extend so that we can kind of like cover ourselves with that blanket and being able to continue the journey through finding the healing that we really need.
I'm sitting with what you just said before I ask my next question. So when I was digging around to get information on you, I found your blog dating all the way back to 2007. And it is a wonderful find. If you ever decide that you want to write a book of poetry, I highly support that journey for you because your writing is beautiful. And I like to go to the very first entry that you put in that's being shown in April. And it's the only entry for April. And these are the words from it. At the beginning, there was nada, nothing but emptiness from here to there. But then nada began changing. She breathed, she moved. Sometimes she even thought. And so nada became algo. Something she became. And the more nada grew into algo, the more something she wanted to be. And so she became creation. Creation she is. As usual, I am waiting for that kind of miracles to happen at my drawing table today. And so now here we are sitting with you in this space, a New York Times bestselling writer, award-winning author, and reading this post about writer's block. What helps you shake off those moments of blockages and pushes you to write and illustrate these beautiful creations that we spoke about today?
Well, I'm really touched that you just read that. My blog, I haven't even touched it in a long time, so it's kind of like history. And right now that you mentioned that, like being in front of the table, it makes me remember that even when we despair that, oh my goodness, I forgot how to do this, I don't know how to draw anymore, like I have no words, maybe I've lost my talent, who knows, but that it is being here in the space, on the creation space, trusting your hands, trusting that you already know how to do those things, you know how to draw, you know how to make shapes, you know how to make, like squiggles and things like that, and how to put one letter after the other. We know all those things already. And we have our stories, we have our intuition, we have our unique view, we have our gifts. Our gifts are always with us. Those gifts that I speak about in the book Dreamers, which is that kind of backpack that we are always carrying with us wherever we go. And sometimes we are not capable of recognizing because for whatever reason, we don't realize that we are brimming with all those things. We are brimming with the tools, with the stories, with the presence, with our unique way of doing and seeing things. And that we can always rest assured that the stories and the art and everything, it is in us. We have it. We are that art, and we just need to sit at the table and make it happen. Just come out, just let it go, let it pour out. Don't not yet. Don't question it yet. Don't try to stop it to make it be something different yet. So we let it go, we let it come out, and eventually we will do the work, because we want to do something that is going to be is going to be right for our readers, that is going to recreate our readers, who is going to give them something to grow with or accompany them. We don't want to just put something sloppy out there, or something that even with our best intentions might end up hurting our children. But we do need to let it out first. And later we will do whatever work needs to be done, so that then it is the most dignified thing that we can offer to our readers. So right now that you read that, it helps me a lot. I'm in a time where I'm reshaping my next book and thinking a little bit more about my story, and I go through all those doubts again and again. No matter how many books, there is always this time where I feel like a child again. I feel like, mis dibujos son muy feos, no? Like my drawings are so ugly, and what is gonna happen?
Not Yuyi Morales.
Because that's the thing. I don't know. We see it in our children. We see it in children. Children are always thinking that whatever they do, it seems like it's never enough. Well, actually, there is a time where children fit into. It's like we adults are creating that world in where expectations are so great for them that whether before they knew themselves these geniuses, later they start doubting themselves. And we as adults, we are carrying with that doubt. And we have to struggle, and we have to remind ourselves over and over again that we are still that innocent, brilliant light that it is still in there. We have everything we need to do to still be that. And honoring those children that we are, and honoring the children that we are working for and that are part of our lives at this moment, we can always try to recreate that light and that brilliance to continue making those stories. And that's something that I have to remind myself also, even at this moment. So I thank you for helping me remember that we just have to make it work.
Yes. Well, we are at the part of our conversation where we have one last question that we love to ask all of our guests when they come on. And that is, we want to know what your top 5 favorite books are of all time. If that is hard for you to answer, we also give you the option of what are the top 5 books that you are excited that that are coming out, maybe from other people or things that you've seen, or even art pieces that you've seen that you want everyone to know about.
Sure. Like my number 1 book, and that's because it was very, very influential to me, is a book from Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the Colombian author. I read that book when I was 12 years old. I read it at school, and I didn't consider myself a reader. I didn't think that I love reading, especially the books that my teacher said that we had to read. But when I read that story, I knew I was a reader, and it has carried me for a long, long time. It's called, in Espanol, it has a very long name. It's called La increíble y triste historia de la cándida Heréndira y su abuela desalmada. In English, it's only called Heréndira. Very short name. It's a book of short stories, and it is magnificent. There are books that have been really, really important to me through the years. And in Dreamers, I explored those books, and you can always go there to the images or to the end of the book, where I have a list of some of the books that have been really important to me. Some of those books have changed, like as we change as people, as our world changes, we also have different ways of I have ways of seeing those books, and sometimes I realize, well, that was a good book for me in that time, but now we need other offers. We need other books, and that's why I also like your question, like what are the things that I'm excited at this moment? Because some books that were part of our growing up when we were younger might not be the books that we necessarily will give our children right now, because our children are different children as well, and we want this world to transform, so we also need to transform our reading list. I have here actually a couple, and I don't have them all with me, but there is this book right now by Duncan Tonatiuh, and it's a book called The Land of Books. Duncan Tonatiuh is Mexican. He also is a United States citizen, and he has a style of making artwork that is inspired in the Mixtec indigenous art. And in this book he explores the stories, how books were made in pre-Columbian times, and how those books, most of them, when the Spaniards, conquistadores, came into Mexico, they destroyed them. They destroyed them, pretty much all of them. I was reading that exist about 15 of those books are left from
this one, right?
Exactly, A Land of Books. It's a magnificent book. When I was reading it, I was so moved. So that's a book that I recommend. I have here the book of, this is illustrated by my sister, Yuyi Morales, and she just gave me a copy. It hasn't come out. It comes out in April. And I love what she did. This is a story, Leah Henderson is the writer, but it's a story that you hear all around the world about a little hummingbird who is trying to fight a fire by bringing water in her beak and just putting drop by drop to stop the fire from destroying the land. And I have like this illustration, which I think is
my goodness.
Wow.
yeah. So this is one of the books that I'm very excited about right now. It is not only because it is my sister, it's because I think that both the author and the illustrator did an amazing job. And I have a lot of really favorite books, but I read recently a book. This is not a picture book. This is a book called, they call her Fregona. And this is by David, and I'm forgetting his last name, I'm sorry. But if you look for the title, They Call Her Fregona, it's a story which is the sequel of the story of They Call Me Güero. That was the first book. And now this is the story of a young teenagers, a guy and Güero and Fregona, and they have a little bit of a big of a love story there, romantic love story there, but also in the context of family and in the context of what happens with adults being taken by immigration, sometimes being deported, and how communities deal with those situations, but and also with the situations of family connection and community connection, and how whether it is celebrating Christmas or celebrating Thanksgiving or celebrating these hybrid celebrations that happen when you put two different cultures together, which is Mexicans and the United States people, and this mix, this rich mix of what's created when we as communities come together. It's a really wonderful book. I just read it recently and I love it. And
This is it, Yuyi. David Bowles?
Exactly, David Bowles, exactly.
Yeah, because
we were just talking
yes,
about that.
Cairo loves, that's my son's name. His other book, My Two Border Towns, where this young boy crosses the border and sees like the disparity of how life is in Mexico and then in the United States.
Exactly, yes. And I want to go back also to some of the books that like were important to me, as I was growing up. There is a book called La Noche de Tlatelolco. I think that in English you are calling it maybe Tlatelolco Night, and this is a story of the in 1968. When the Olympics were going to happen here in Mexico, the government tried to stop a students' movement that was happening at the time, and it ended up in killing the people that were doing marches and they were organizing. And this is a story that was very important to me when I read it. This was 68, the same year where I was born. And then when I was a teenager, I got to read this book. It's written by Elena Poniatowska, and it's an incredible account of what happened in that night. And it is important because it's not only part of history. It's something that is still happening now. Not very long ago happened the thing in Ayotzinapa, where also students were also just made disappear. 43 students from the, it was the school for teachers. They are rural school, very, very activist, very politicized. And then these children, these kids are being disappeared. So that's not only all story, all history. This is still happening now. And that's what I feel, that books like those are very important, because we need to know what's happening in our country, what's happening in our society, what's happening to our young people, so that we can be there for them as they need it. Right now, I'm very, very interested, and I haven't read it yet, but I have a couple of books here, like this one.
Oh, I read that one. Gender Fear is amazing. That book is so good.
Exactly. And I'm so looking forward to read it, because we really need to be able to make a world for our children to be everything they need, they can be, they are everything that they already are. For me, it is very important that we as adults stop ourselves from this delirium of that we are going to transform our children so that they become something productive, something valuable, and start realizing that our children are already everything they need to do to be, but that we need to create a world where they can shine, where they can survive, where they are not going to be fighting for their lives, for their survival, for being visible. So at this point, to me, the books that are important are those that we are going to make so that our world can be that place where our children thrive, and where we can let ourselves be the students of our children, so that they can be our teachers, our maestros y maestras, and teach us how we can create a world that they deserve.
And on that, ladies and gentlemen,
Yuyi
Morales. It has been a pleasure and honor. I cannot say that more. I'm just so glad to have been able to speak to you. This conversation has definitely been enlightening and informing, and one that I know will sit definitely with both of us we will be talking about this
Yes.
for time to come. Thank you so
Yes.
much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for
Juji, thank you so much. This like affirms in my heart that what we do here is important, because then I encounter people like you that I feel like is in a self-actualized like level. You know, like people need to hear your voice, read your work, look at your art, because they're missing out if they don't pay attention. Like you have these jewels that people need to see. Because you know, this is a very short time of like our lives, but we've learned like a lot from you. You know, more, I think, you know, life experience, you know, this is something else, Juji. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed our show.
Our show has been produced and edited by Preston Long. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast.
Our theme song you've been nodding your head to is by Sean Kantrowitz. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Dammit. That's SeanDammit.
Follow us on Instagram at The Vulgar Geniuses.
Bye!